What is good, everybody? I am back with another one of these shows. I haven't posted one of these on this channel in a long time, especially the podcast. I thought I'd bring it back. We're at a pretty, important spot in the season. Things are really trending up for the Wolves right now. There's a lot of, good things to talk about, and I guess that's what I was kind of waiting for to happen before I came back to one of these platforms. But today I'll be breaking down a lot of stuff, recent success, Anthony Edwards and his All-Star case. By the way, we're going to figure that out in a few hours if he's an All-Star or not. And I want to talk about Karl-Anthony Towns and, what the team could look like when he comes back. And probably the biggest topic, talk about the trades. Do the Timberwolves, should they make moves? Should they keep D'Lo? Should they keep Naz? But let's get right into this. So it's been, fun to be a Timberwolves fan over the last 17 games, which is, something I couldn't really say as much about the first few months of the season. The Timberwolves are 12-5 since the new year has come about. We are one of the better teams in the league since the new year. I think we're top 3 or top 4 in record since the new year has started. And this is the same exact story as last year for this team. Both of these teams are poised to be second half breakout teams. Last year, that's what we were. We were, pretty mid. We were like at that 50-50 win-loss rate for a lot of the season. I actually spent a lot of the time below 500, similar to this year before the new year. And then we figured it out fast. Last year through 54 games, we were 29-20. We were 29-25. This year through 54 games, we're 28-26. So we're only a game behind. Obviously, there's some context to that. Last year we had really good injury luck compared to this year, really horrible injury luck. Like if Karl-Anthony Towns never got hurt, I would say we're probably around the 31, 32, 33 win mark right now. And that team was also coming off a 5-game win streak last year. But right now the Timberwolves are the 6th seed in the West. We have the potential to go up to the 4 seed as soon as tomorrow night, but we also have the chance to drop down to the 9 seed. That's just, the nature of the West right now. That's how close things are. As long as the Timberwolves can handle business against the Magic tomorrow, they'll at least, stick as a top 6 seed, into the weekend, which would be pretty nice. But we're getting to a really important part of the season where every win seems to matter so much more, it seems like, and we really need to prioritize. I mean, we've had really bad luck, it seems like, against these really, like, I wouldn't say garbage teams. I don't think the Magic are really that horrible. They're the 13th seed in the Eastern Conference. They got some guys, though, on that team. But they're teams that we should be beating, and that's, a game we need to win tomorrow. But a lot of this, Wolves' success we've seen recently, it's mainly because guys like D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards have really figured it out. I'll be talking about both those guys in a large extent later in this show, but that was a big issue when Cat was, healthy before his injury. Those guys did not have it figured out. Now they're really figuring it out. And if, inserting Cat back, you can only imagine how much better the team should get. At the end of the show, I'll be talking about Cat and what inserting him back could look like for everybody. But the team is definitely on a really nice trend up right now. You're hoping that continues, 12-5 in the new year. Let's talk about Anthony Edwards now and his All-Star case. I think Anthony Edwards should be an All-Star. I made a big Instagram post about, his case in general and, why he should be an All-Star. And probably one of the bigger points that I brought up was how well he's played since Karl-Anthony Towns has gone down with his injury. And I'll put up a little stat thing on the screen for you guys right now. So in the last 33 games, that's the amount of time Cat's been out. I can't believe he's been out 33 games. That's crazy. But he's averaging 26 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists in the last 33 games. Those are like all NBA type numbers. And then since the new year has started, he's averaging 27 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists, so pretty similar numbers as in his last 17 games. But 26, 6, and 5 in his last 33. With Karl-Anthony Towns out, he's really, really, stepped up in the role the Wolves needed him to step up in. Because the question was, who's going to take over when Karl-Anthony Towns is gone? Because, obviously, missing him is this massive void, especially in the offense. And while the offense hasn't been great, when he's gone, it's been manageable. It hasn't been horrible, I guess you could say. It's been around average in the league, which is pretty impressive when you lose a primary offensive star, and Karl-Anthony Towns is an All-NBA player. But But it's just really impressive stuff we've seen from Anthony Edwards. I think he should be an all-star. I really am going to be disappointed if Devin Booker makes it over him. Devin Booker is about to come back from his injury. He's missed a ton of time with his injury. He's only played 29 games this year. And Edwards has played 4 more games with Cat out than Booker has played all season. Obviously, Edwards, though. Anthony Edwards, he's played every single game this year. Super impressive. He's even been playing through multiple injuries. He leads the NBA in total minutes played, which is absolutely absurd. Just in general, like for any player to do that's pretty crazy. But to do that as a 21-year-old kid, as now the best player on a team that's the top 6 seed is pretty insane to me. And then he's top 2 in the league in total steals. I think I already said 4th. He's 4th in total points in the NBA. But he's just had a really, really nice season. There were some shaky parts to start the year. He had some really inconsistent games. I remember in the first few weeks of the year, he had a few sub 10-point games, but he got past that. I think he came into the season, he wasn't in basketball shape. He looked like he came into the season on a big bulk, like he gained a ton of muscle, which he did. But that's just not basketball shape. Unfortunately, he needed to lose 10 pounds of that, and he did. He's looking pretty good right now, and I'm just, super, super impressed with what he's done with his season. Being able to keep this team afloat without Karl-Anthony Towns, an all-NBA player, is super impressive. And I think that's more impressive than what, somebody like De'Aaron Fox done this year. I think like if I had to choose one of those players for a game, like I had to choose between Fox and Ant, who I'd rather have for a one game, matchup, I would rather have Edwards because I like his two-way ability more. And I don't know though. We'll see. My ultimate prediction is I feel like my gut's saying that he's probably not going to get chosen. I think I really feel like they might choose Booker, which is not going to make sense to me. Just because Booker is a really big name and he plays for a bigger market. But we'll see. He's right in the mix with all those guys. The coaches voting hopefully is going to steer him in the right direction. The coaches recently just voted, which was pretty good because Ant's been going nuts recently. So hopefully, all the teams that we've been playing, those coaches are voting for that kid because he's been, he's had some pretty dominant performances. He had his first 40-point game recently. Was that against the Rockets? I'm pretty sure it was. But yeah, he's had a really, really fun season to watch, and I really hope he can get his first All-Star appearance from it. But by the way, like if he doesn't make it tonight, I think ultimately he will make it as an injury replacement at least. Every year there's 1 to 2 replacements for each conference when it comes to injuries. There's going to be somebody hurt. That's just the nature of basketball. Stuff happens. Like last year, who was out? I can't remember exactly, but I know Chris Paul had some stuff going on even though he played. Still understand why Chris Paul played in the All-Star game last year because he had this big thumb injury that he was going to have to miss 6 weeks after with. But there were some injury replacements. I believe LaMelo Ball was an injury replacement for the East last year. I don't remember who he was replacing. I know, DeJounte Murray replaced somebody in the All-Star game for the West. So there's always going to be 1 or 2 of those. So if he doesn't make it tonight, he's going to be one of the first in line, if not the first in line, to get in the All-Star game. So I think ultimately he will be a first-year All-Star this year. All right, let's get to these big discussion points, and that's the trade deadline, which is coming up very soon. I don't know the exact date. I think it's like a week away or something. We're really coming up, and I'm pretty sure it's next week. Sorry, I don't know the date for some reason. But obviously the biggest question, surrounding the Timberwolves and, fans and, NBA media and all that is, what's going to happen with D'Angelo Russell? Do you keep him? Do you trade him? Like, what do you do? And personally, I am definitely starting to lean towards the side of supporting keeping him. I think a lot of the fans are as well because of how, he's played super consistently well in the last 3 months. I'll try to put up his December stats on the screen right now if I remember to. His stats since December till now. He has been, this is the most consistent I feel like he's been in his career. Maybe he had a consistent run like this in Brooklyn, but he has been so good in the last few months, and he is really showing why he got paid $30 million a year. I don't know what he gets if we keep him. By the way, with keeping D'Angelo Russell, you have to if you want to keep D'Angelo Russell, you have to be looking into extending him, because you're not in a spot where, one, if you're willing to lose him, then just trade him. But if you're not willing to lose him and you don't want to trade him, that means you got to extend him, because you can't lose. Like, we don't get like $30 million of cap space, with him off the books. We don't get all this freedom money because we're already over the cap. So we're just gonna lose $30 million in a cap slot if we don't re-sign D'Angelo Russell, if we don't trade him. So that's why if you don't trade him, you're gonna have to try to extend him, and I'm fine with that, depending for the right price. I wouldn't, offer him a contract for a few more months though, because I still want to make sure, he keeps this thing consistently rolling, which I think he will. I think he's starting to figure it out. He's having the most efficient year of his career, by the way. I'll try to pull out the stats. I posted on Instagram today, but he has had the most efficient year of his career. And he's done well in the lower usage role, which is good. His usage last year, I think, was like 25 to 27%. This year it's down to 22%. And, it's kind of like, how is it down if Cat's been out for so long? But it's because Edwards has taken over as the main ball handler in a lot of spots for the Wolves, which D'Lo's done a really good job becoming, adapting his game to be an off-ball shooter more, and just, shooting really well in general. I'm trying to pull up the stats right now. Here we go. So D'Angelo Russell this year, 46% from the field. That's the best of his career. He's shooting 54% from two-point range. That's the best of his career. He's shooting 38.7% from three. That's tied for his best, season in his career. And he's got a near 60 true shooting, and he's got a 56 efficiency grade, which is really, really nice for a smaller guard, I guess you could say. But he's had a really impressive year when it comes to efficiency and those numbers. He's still, a leading playmaker type guard. Sometimes I want the turnovers to drop a little bit, but I still think he's, a primary facilitator and is good enough to play that role for sure. Obviously, you have the questions with him defensively. Those will always be questions, unfortunately, but I think the team has enough defensive talent around him where you can hide that a little bit. Over time, Ant's a good defender right now, but in a few years, he's going to continue to get better, as he continues to mature and just get more experience in general. Jaden McDaniels, he has to be an All-NBA defender this year. If he doesn't make an All-NBA defensive team, that is going to be embarrassing for the NBA. I think he's statistically literally the best perimeter defender in the NBA this year. And I literally just lost my train of thought. Oh, and you have Karl Anthony Towns, who is an okay defender. He's not going to hurt you most of the time, and he's not going to really help you most of the time either. And then you obviously have Gobert, who can be a really big positive. 3-time defensive player of the year. But I'm definitely leading towards keeping D'Angelo Russell, because I just don't think you can get, you're not going to get a better player than D'Angelo Russell if you trade him. You're just not. You can't, unless you package somehow a bunch of first-round picks and some guys, which we can't really do. You can maybe try to do D'Lo, Nowell, and maybe some of our young guys and Prince to get somebody better, but I don't see any players in the market that you can really do that with. So you're basically looking for a return of a player and a first-round pick, or two average players. And I just don't think that really makes that much sense to do. Yeah, sure, it could make sense to get a defensive guard next to Ant, who doesn't command as many shots, but we've seen, D'Lo hasn't even taken that many shots a game this year. I think he's around 13 or 14 shot attempts per game, which is multiple lower than, the recent years of his career. So he's really adapted to becoming a less, a lower usage shooter, which has obviously impacted his efficiency positively. But I'm definitely leaning towards you got to keep this guy probably. I could see some packages where, trading him makes sense, but I don't know. I don't think any of those will be offered to us. And I think the team should and, try to extend him, get him off the trade block, whatever you can do. I think you got to keep D'Angelo Russell in Minnesota. All right, let's talk about Naz Reid. He's been he's definitely one of the fan favorites for the Timberwolves fan base. He's been playing he's had some really impressive basketball games as of late, and he's another guy on the roster where you're like, maybe do you trade him or do you extend him? And he's another guy where I'm like, yeah, I think I'm trying to, I'm thinking of leaning to extending him. I don't know exactly what kind of contract we'd be looking at. I know I wonder if it's similar to Nowell, because I know Nowell with his max contract that he could have gotten if the Timberwolves wanted to extend Nowell was like 4 years, $58 million. And I think it's probably the same with Naz. I don't think he would get all that, but he would probably get a solid, he'd probably get close to all of that. We're talking about a guy who's probably going to command like $10 million a year. And I think that's probably worth it for a guy like Naz Reid. But there's obvious questions, when Karl-Anthony Towns and Gobert are both healthy, how big is Naz's role? Because if you think to yourself, if Connolly and the coaching staff are like, maybe he just doesn't really play that much those nights, then maybe it doesn't make sense to extend him. But if you're like, oh, we can probably, get him at a bunch of power forward minutes and probably have him, a shift or two a game at center still, and then he can play, like how many minutes, I'm looking up right now, he's playing 18 minutes a game this year. I think you could probably keep him around that mark. With Cat and Gobert back, it would be hard to, because you'd have to force feed him power forward minutes in spots. Like you could probably still do, 6 to 8 minutes of those with him just at center, but you would have to put him next to Cat or Gobert for some time. I feel like he's worked solidly well next to Gobert in the minutes I've seen them play together. I haven't seen too many issues with that. With Cat coming back, I would like to see those two next to each other as well. I'd be a little bit more worried with Cat and Naz next to each other because they're both not very nice defenders compared to, Gobert, who is a defensive player of the year caliber guy, and he can make up for defensive mistakes of Naz at times. But I'm definitely leaning towards extending this guy. With Naz Reid, there was like some rumors about the Timberwolves were kind of interested in somebody like Bones Highland from the Nuggets, and I would assume the Nuggets would want somebody like Naz Reid back. I don't think that's a horrible trade, but I can understand why you'd want to keep and extend Naz, and I'd also understand why you'd want to get Bones Highland in that deal. We'll see what happens. I don't think that'll actually happen. But I would try to keep Naz in Minnesota unless there's just like this crazy package where you just can't decline it, because I don't think Naz is like, extremely, extremely vital to this team's success. Because I think he's, proven to be a guy who, while he can still play well against some top matchups, he definitely struggles a lot more than you'd want a guy to struggle for somebody you're thinking about extending like a 3-4 year deal. That's why he's a bench center. That's why he doesn't really play over guys like Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns. Not that he should be expected to, but he's a perfect bench role player. I think he could be a 6th man of the year candidate for sure. And I think that's worth locking something like that up for, 4 years on, $10 million a year. I think it's a really good deal for us. And that's what I would try to do if I were the Wolves. But hey, let's move on to the next player. Gotta talk about Jaylen Nowell. And man, he is really disappointed recently for the Timberwolves. It's crazy how much we've switched up on him as a fan base, and rightfully so, I guess. He deserves to probably be switched up on like that. Just like 4 months ago, we were talking about this guy like he was the future of the bench. We gotta get this guy on the 4-year extension now, and now we're like, some people are like, let's send him to the Shanghai Sharks, which I obviously won't do, but I would actively, like if I was Tim Connolly, I would be actively trying to trade him, because I think once McLaughlin and Towns come back, with how deep the rotation would be then, I wouldn't want McLaughlin in my rotation. Not McLaughlin. I wouldn't want Nowell in my rotation. I would definitely want McLaughlin in my rotation. He's pretty vital to the team. But just with the streakiness of his scoring, he's supposed to be this microwave scorer where he can get buckets really fast, and he can do that. but his shooting has been really off this year. He's legitimately the worst uncontested three-point shooter in the league, which I don't understand how he can't make an open three-point shot to save his life, and he gets a lot of opportunities. I think he gets probably at least one a game, and he's shooting like 30% of them, and doesn't make sense to me why he's shooting so bad from deep. But yeah, he's had impressive stretches where he's really helped us win games with a lot of quick buckets that he can get, and that's why I think he could present value to other teams that need microwave scorers off the bench, especially the guard position, because he still has that upside to be the guy that we expected him to be. He's just not coming through on it right now, and I think it's a really good opportunity for the Wolves to get some value because I don't think the team's going to try to extend him, and he's a restricted free agent after the season, and I don't want to pay him, the money that he's probably going to want. So it just makes sense to unload him for whatever you can get. I don't know if I would, I don't know if I'd really want to just unload him for a second round pick. I'd maybe try to get more. We'll see. Worst comes to worst, you're getting only second round pick offers, which I feel like teams would probably try to offer more. Not necessarily a first round pick range, but maybe at least some type of asset player wise that we could want. Of course, my phone just fell. That's awesome. But yeah, if I were the Timberwolves and Tim Connolly, I would definitely be actively trying to trade that guy. I'm still a fan of his talent in general. I don't really dislike Nowell that much. I probably like him more still than most, the average Wolves fan. But I'm definitely on the train where you got to try to get what value you can out of him right now, because I don't think the on-court production is really going to start coming for a little bit. But some names I wanted to mention, not really related to Nowell, but some guys I could maybe see the Wolves being attached to when it comes to trade deadline talk. I mean, Josh Richardson from the Spurs, I have interest in. I think he could be a really sweet bench piece for this team. Bones Highland, who I was talking about before. The thing with Bones Highland is he's better than Nowell right now, and he's got 2 more full years left on a really tiny contract, and he's like 22 years old. So I could definitely be interested in getting somebody like Highland. And then this is really unlikely. I don't think we're really going to be in the mix for this guy, but Jay Crowder, I think he'd be really nice with this team. And if the price gets low enough, which I've heard that the Suns might even have to ship him off for a second round pick if interest doesn't pick up, I would definitely throw a second round pick for Jay Crowder if we can maximize this season, because I like Tim Connolly's drafting ability, but second round picks can be hit or miss, and I think he could really improve this team's ceiling, not because he's that good of a player, but he's this really big time vet presence that the team doesn't really have. We have guys like Rivers and such, but they don't really fill that role as much as a Jay Crowder would, and he'd be a really tough addition to this team. But yeah, trade deadline is coming up. Definitely let me know in the comments what you want to do there, and let's get to the last segment of this show. All right, let's talk about Karl-Anthony Towns and when he could come back, or what it will look like inserting him back into this team, because there's obviously questions. A lot of things will be moving around again. But the question is also, when is this dude going to come back? We don't know. Some people are saying it might be in a month or 2, which is really unfortunate. My guess is the earliest he comes back is after the ALLSTAR break, but at this point with the information we have, that's probably still pushing it. He just posted when the Eagles won the NFC Championship on his Instagram story, because he's an Eagles fan. He was in a boot in his right leg still, and that was literally just 4 or 5 days ago. So I can't imagine he's really be back that soon if he's still in a boot right now. But my guess is probably now is trying to move to sometime in March that he's going to be back. So we still got time. We don't have to really worry about, adjusting things quite yet when Cat comes back. But when he does come back, Finch brought this up as well. 2 months ago, I remember he said it, how the team is going to use him more in the corner as a 3-point shooter and a slasher. Mainly, I think that's a really, really good role for him, because those are the 2 of the things that he's best at. So this will be a little less on-ball work, and that's just fine. You want when he comes back, obviously, naturally, Ant's not going to be able to keep up the same on-ball usage as he is, unless you drastically dropped some players around him like D'Lo's. but he'll get a little bit less. But we'll still try to keep Ant with the ball in his hands a lot, is my assumption. But Cat's just going to be inserted back as, hopefully his shooting returns to form, because in the 19-ish games I think he's played this year, his shooting was not like he usually has, and I think there's a few outlier games that are really affecting that. Like, I remember that Charlotte Hornets game where he went like 1 of 12 from 3. Like, if that game didn't happen, his shooting percentage goes up like 5% from 3. So there's definitely some outlier games that make his numbers look worse than they should be from 3-point range. But if he can figure out that 3-point shooting again, be a 40% 3-point shooter again, which he should be, and then this big 6'11" elite quick slasher, that would be pretty sweet. He's probably playing like middle of the pack average defense, not better, not worse than that. So he's not going to do too much for you on that end, but he's definitely he's definitely going to improve the offense, and that's the biggest thing. The Wolves offense needs that boost still. And, adding him back will put Kyle Anderson back on the bench, which will make our bench absolutely stacked again, and I'd be pretty confident with running that bench unit. But yeah, just in general, this team needs more depth back, and that will just naturally happen with those guys returning. But we'll see what happens. I'm not too worried about, what things will look like when Cat returns back, because, I'm just worried about when the dude's going to come back in general, because he's probably going to be out for a little bit longer here. But hey, thank you guys for tuning in to this show. Not too sure what the future of this looks like. I'm going to have this on YouTube and hopefully Spotify as well. But thank you guys for joining in, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.